Hello, welcome again to Miami Community Health. I'm Dr. Anthony Gonzalez, and I'm your host for another important health topic. Today, we're going to talk about vaccinations. Vaccinations because August is Vaccination Awareness Month. And there's been a lot of discussion, debate, controversy on whether vaccines are good or not. We've heard about vaccines on this show in other areas. We've heard about cervical cancer and the importance of vaccination to prevent cervical cancer. So obviously, occurs mostly in children. And so I brought a friend, a classmate, a colleague, Dr. Anna Hernandez Puga, with us today to talk to us about vaccinations. Welcome, Anna.
Hi there, Tony. Glad to be here today.
All righty. So
Go
Anna's
ahead.
a pediatrician. No, Anna, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a pediatrician. Tell us about what you do.
I am a community pediatrician right now. I actually worked at a special needs center about 20 years ago. I'm sorry, about 20 years. And about 8 years ago, I joined a private practice here in Miami. I've been teaching residents all along, I've been teaching medical students all along. And so it's important to me to also teach families about diseases, about how to take care of their children. And that is part of pediatrics. And so I hope today I'm able to help you a little bit about that with our conversation.
Great. So obviously, we're going to talk about vaccination. So why don't we start off and just talk about what is a vaccine? What is the purpose of it?
So vaccines are meant to protect people of all ages from certain diseases, not only viral diseases, but also bacterial diseases. And historically, we have eradicated many diseases. And right now, a lot of people don't remember some of these diseases. Maybe luckily or unluckily, we haven't seen them, like polio. Maybe we have seen people with the aftermath, but if we remember history, some family members may remember families that had like a father, an aunt, an uncle with an iron lung, and they were like, this was a huge thing. When the vaccine was developed, people would stand in line for hours to get a polio vaccine, and we were able to eradicate it. And but we don't see that anymore, so we don't have that experience. There's another big one that people probably haven't seen, except maybe there's a mark on their shoulder. It's the smallpox vaccine. Thankfully, we haven't seen it, but it eradicated, and it was devastating for families. So if you Google smallpox, you'll see it. And so, people sort of have forgotten about that. But even let's talk about the measles. It decreased infections by 80%. Unfortunately, in the last year, there have been more, because of lack of vaccination, there have been more cases all of last year, as of April of this year. So now we're in August. April of this year, all of last year, we had more cases of measles as of April. And so we were actually advising families that if you're going to travel around the world, there's measles out there, and it's a big deal. People just don't know what it is. I saw it in residency, and I had to get an extra shot of the measles shot because I was exposed. And that's a reality right now that we are living in. So it's important. It can affect our very vulnerable families, and I can go on and on. But I mean, you can tell me when to go to another direction. But I have seen families truly affected by these diseases. Maybe not polio, maybe not smallpox, but things like the measles, things like mumps. It's still out there.
Right. So obviously, vaccines historically have made a huge difference, and we're going to go into some of the misconceptions and so forth. But before I do that, why August? Why is August Vaccination Awareness Month?
Because it's back to school. And
Okay.
so parents, we've, in many offices, all the pediatricians know that August is crazy back to school month. We try to bring the kids in since May, but families, it is what it is. Everybody comes in August. Yesterday was the school in Miami-Dade County, and in Broward County, it was Monday. So all of this last week and this week, it's been crazy, and everybody needs their shot records. Schools require shots to come in. There are certain vaccines that are recommended, but it's also to protect the community. And that's why, it's to raise awareness. It's to, the people that came up with this immunization awareness, they did it this time of the year because this is where the most people go to the doctor and get their shots. But it's to promote the awareness that we're protecting a community. We're protecting vulnerable populations. Kids, this is where kids are in most amount of people is when they go back to school. They go in camps, but in school, everybody comes in hordes at all ages. So it's to remind people about that.
All right, so now the misconceptions. Is this something relatively new? Are we hearing more about it because we're more connected, because of social media and because news is so available to us? Or is it really now there's been an era of resistance to vaccines? I've even heard about vaccines possibly causing other conditions, and they talk about, impacting development of children and everything else. So talk to us. Why the misconceptions? Is it true? What does the data tell us?
So, interesting, I like to look at history as well. People have always been hesitant for new changes. So back in the day when the Spanish flu, which was in the 1900s, came around, there were many people that were against the flu vaccine. They didn't want it. They were anti-mask, anti-this, all of that. But so the hesitancy has always been there. But in the 1900s, when the Spanish flu was around, there was no social media. So you couldn't go and get it right there. So, people have always questioned to a different degree. Mm-hmm. Now, with social media and, as a pediatrician, because I think a lot of parents, that's one of the important things of having a trusting relationship with your pediatrician. And as a pediatrician, I also have to be on the latest trend, whatever that may be on TikTok or Instagram, so that I can educate my families. But if you've watched the show, The Social Dilemma on Netflix, it talks about algorithms. And right now, if I don't have my phone with me on purpose, but because I get, distracted, right? Like it happens all the time. But if they're listening to us, it's going to keep feeding that same fear or that same topic. And the anti-vaxxers or the fear mongers, whatever, are, parents want to do right for their child. And I can't blame them. Like, as a parent, I don't want to do anything that can hurt my child. So when you go on social media, it's going to say, what do I think? But if you've already searched it, it's going to keep feeding you that information. I even challenge my medical students and my residents to search things up. You need to see where you're getting your info, because just because you read it somewhere doesn't mean it's true. And we don't have Snopes anymore like we did back when we were in residency, right, or whatever. It's so, we need to be careful with what we have. There are some misconceptions that the vaccine can cause autism, and that, nobody wants their child to have autism. But we have proven time and time again that it is not related. There are, and I can tell you the first study that came up with this thought was, I don't even know the year anymore, but it was a gentleman in England, in the UK, that said that the MMR caused autism. What happened in the UK? This whole community stopped giving MMR, and guess what? Measles happened, and autism kept happening. And so that, we know that. I know children who haven't been vaccinated and gotten autism, or not gotten it, but it's been there. Autism doesn't just happen from one day to the next. There are flags. In fact, pediatricians are checking every well visit. They're checking to see if there are any of those flags to make sure that we have early intervention. Vaccines don't have mercury anymore. When they did, and they didn't really have mercury, they had thimerosal, which was a minute 0.0001%. No vaccine at this moment has preservatives, except one type, which is the flu shot, which is a multi-dose vial, and it doesn't, and most pediatricians don't have it. And even Walgreens and all of that, they use single dose vaccines. So that's another misconception. There's no mercury in it. No. But unfortunately, you'll still find websites that will tell you all these horrible things that vaccines can do. It doesn't introduce bad things into your body. What is introduced is a small piece of bacteria or a small piece of the virus that is very broken down. It can't cause disease. It can cause side effects, and a pediatrician does go over that with a parent, and it goes away by 36 hours. And so, it is meant to protect the child from a devastating disease. So these misconceptions are going to be there because we are fearful for our children and we want to do right by them. But science proves it wrong each and every time.
So what happens? So we obviously know vaccines are safe. They've helped communities. Historically, it's revolutionized. We've eradicated diseases because of vaccines. And we know that these misconceptions are not well founded. So what happens to those families, those kids and those parents who are against vaccination? Is there a place for that? Do they get to go to school? What happens?
So a lot of pediatricians in the community may not take them. Like I do not take children in my office that are not wanting to vaccinate. A lot of times they'll interview me as a prenatal, and I'll talk to them and I'll say, okay, I'll work with you. And a lot of times we'll do a delayed, like spaced out vaccine. But if they totally refuse, there are other pediatricians that will work with them about getting them into school. There are families, and honestly, I've looked at the statistics in the west coast of Florida. That happens a lot. There's a lot higher numbers of people that are not vaccinated for whatever reason. I haven't figured that one out yet why, but they'll get what's called a religious exemption from the health department.
Mm.
And that's how they can get away with it in the school, because the school does need it. Like, school requires a certain amount of diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis vaccines, a certain amount of polio vaccines, a certain amount of MMR, like 2 MMR, 2 chicken pox shots, 4 DTaP, which is a diphtheria, tetanus, and whooping cough, and then 1 coming into 7th grade, and 3 hepatitis B. And so, in fact, if you have I just examined a bunch of international students that came from Spain to get their paperwork all done to go to a school here in Miami. They had to get it all done. And if they didn't get it, I made their pediatrician in Europe, in their respective countries, to get their updated vaccines. And they won't be accepted. Otherwise, they have to get a religious exemption. Some schools are stricter about it than others. I have found that I have heard from people consult me sometimes, so that I have found that certain schools will say they won't take you. They just won't. And which is, if it's a private school, they can do that. They can choose what to do. But public schools, they're going to take everybody, but you have to have a religious exemption.
All right. So kids are coming back to school. We know that they're an agar plate to grow all types of bugs. So what are the common things that we're seeing in these kids as they go back to school, and the illnesses that we notice now in the next couple months, and the first few months of the school year?
So right now, my office has been packed with COVID, flu, RSV, rhinovirus, enterovirus, all respiratory diseases. Oh, and hand, foot, mouth, and fifth disease. Some of these, for the flu, you can get a flu shot every year that can help not totally prevent the flu B, which is what's going around, but at least not get as bad as could be. Kids get hospitalized. Kids can get complications. I had a little baby be hospitalized, a newborn, for 11 days with RSV. That's a vaccine. Now it's a vaccine preventable disease. Moms who are pregnant from 32 to 35 weeks can actually get a vaccine to help prevent RSV in their newborn baby. But for older kids going back to school, RSV is out there. It's a hacking cough. They can get a fever. They can wheeze. The same with rhinovirus, enterovirus. With flu B, they have vomiting. They have diarrhea, high fever. COVID, high fever, croup. It's just a ton of stuff.
And can the parents prevent this from happening? I mean, or is this going to happen? I mean, because they're all in the classroom and the kids are not protected. They're not wearing masks anymore.
No, and some parents, interesting, send their kids with a mask, but most don't, and it's really hard to have a child keep a mask on.
Okay.
We have to be like, I know parents who've told me that teachers said you got to put a mask on. Tell that to a 5-year-old. Like, it's really, really hard. I tell parents all the time, when your child learns how to wash their hands and not touch their face, you will see a decrease in their frequency of their colds. We can encourage them to do that, but it's, and that's why teachers will ask for those Clorox wipes and those hand sanitizers. But I mean, if the kid keeps touching their face, and they're those kids that keep their hands in their mouth, but they can teach them to do this. You can teach a child since they're 2 years old to do that, not to be overly crazy about it, but let's teach them so that they can learn to prevent.
Yeah. All right. So when should parents seek a pediatrician? When they're going back to school, they see the kid a little, having a cough or a cold, or not feeling well, or I don't feel well, mom, maybe because they don't want to go to school for another reason. When should parents be concerned,
So, I usually tell families, listen, there's certain things that, there's a gut feeling. Parents should be listening to their gut feeling. Many pediatricians have an answering service at night available, a nurse talking to them, their own pediatrician. They even have, like, on some of their websites, things called symptom checkers so that they can look up. Don't Google at 2 a.m. But do look at legitimate websites like the healthychildren.org website. You can actually search certain symptoms and it'll help you decide what to do. But at the same time, big, horrible signs like to think of: high fever that you can't bring down, even though you've been doing Tylenol or Motrin, that the child is refusing to eat for a certain amount of time. Of course, I'm saying these things, but it also depends on the age, because there's different ages. That's why, there could be it's different when I'm talking about a 4-month-old than perhaps a 7-year-old versus a 15-year-old. But if they're lethargic, in other words, they're not responding to you, they refuse to drink, and they continue vomiting and diarrhea, at that moment, you should be calling your pediatrician. We're there 24/7, 7 days a week, either, personally or with our answering service, who will help you, guide you. Because if you go immediately to the urgent care, you're going to be waiting for 3 to 4 hours and pick something else up there. And you don't want that. Maybe we can do something over the phone and take care of you and see you in the office the next day. But maintain that communication with your pediatrician.
Something you mentioned, pediatrics, the prenatal, is that occurring a lot, where you're even picking out your pediatrician even before the baby is born?
Yes. Yeah. So I encourage that because, so they interview me as a pediatrician, any community pediatrician, they'll interview. You want to make sure you have a good match. When you hire a contractor for your house, I don't know, you're gonna investigate that person, right? So when a pediatrician is an important person, you want to interview them to know if you match. What if you hate me? I get it. We're not going to like each other necessarily, but how can we have a trusting relationship?
Right.
So a lot of times that's that first thing. Some people have interviewed me, and when they find out certain things about me that we're just not a good match, they go on their way, and that's good for both of us, because I encourage that. But I also, that's when we talk about, there's maybe the mom has certain problems, and so we prepare them what to do when the baby's born. But I also talk about vaccines at that point, because I let them know this is what we do, and this is sort of a schedule. This is what you can do. Moms can get a tetanus shot, a flu shot, and an RSV shot to help protect their baby. That's another reason we do vaccines, to protect the vulnerable ones like a baby.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so we're focusing on Vaccination Awareness Month. We've talked about vaccines. We've talked about the safety of vaccines. We know historically it's been great. We know that obviously it will prevent these conditions and diseases. And we've already visited a little bit of the common illnesses and colds, COVID, flu, and everything that these kids will get. But kids deal with a lot of other issues in school, and they deal with stress, they deal with bullying. And so let's talk a little bit about how you as a parent, the parents that are listening to our show and being educated, how do they deal with the stress that a child has to undergo and the issues with, pressure, peer pressure? There's so much. Of course, it may
So
not happen at a kindergarten level, but I'm sure in middle school and in high school, it's much different than when we went to school now. So what do parents do? How can they help their kids?
a lot of times it's having, one of the main things is having an open communication with your child, realizing also that every child is different, because maybe one child, things in Spanish you say le rosa, it just,
Yes.
nothing bothers them. But then there's that other sensitive child. And so if you're a parent of 2 or 3 children, you have to treat them differently depending on their needs. But having a regular schedule helps. Letting them know that you're there for them absolutely helps. Give them opportunities to show where they shine helps, because some kids are afraid of school, perhaps because they hate math. But then remind them that, plenty of people hate math, but you're excellent at reading. If it's because they're just nervous, they don't like to be around a lot of people, then perhaps talking to that teacher, because it's important to also let their teacher know, my child may need to have a downtime, and some children more than others. Like some children are very anxious, and you can actually ask for accommodations for that anxious child or for that ADD child, that they need to have extra time to complete work, and let them know about that. Don't hide it from them that they're getting extra accommodations or anything like that. It's not, every child, what we want, and we remind them, is that we want them to succeed in life. We want them, there are certain things that are always going to be hard, and we need to do hard things, but we let them know that we're there to support them, and letting them know that. A lot of people think, oh, they know that. No, sometimes they need to hear it. A hug helps, but also showing them through action, and maybe calming them down through exercise. Some kids love dance, some kids love baseball, giving them that release when they get home and allowing for that release, because they've been trying to behave all day, and then just let them go. Maybe they want to cry, maybe they want to run, they want to throw a basketball, or they just want to go to sleep. Let them do that, and then they're ready to start again and do homework. But
Wow.
yeah, those are
That's
just
good information. Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. Now, how can you pick up, not, maybe even a 15-year-old won't tell you that they're stressed, and definitely a 6-year-old won't tell you that they're stressed. So are there clues that a parent can pick up that the child is stressed and there's undue pressure on them?
Yeah, so you have to be looking at your child, and sometimes some kids really hide it well, and we don't catch it. But one of the things, is to see if there's a difference in their demeanor, right? So during the summer, they're your happy child,
Mm-hmm.
and there's not that stress of school. But if you see all of a sudden that their demeanor completely changed, and they're like, they don't want to talk to you, or they're hitting you more because they're younger, or that 15-year-old that just, the thing was with the 15-year-old, many 15-year-olds are completely okay, but they want to be shut out in their room because they don't want to talk to anybody. But don't ask them, how did your day go? No, don't, because they're going to say fine. You're going to say, depending on the age, you need to be creative on how to ask the question. And you could say, hey, were you able to do that reading homework? Maybe with the 6-year-old, or did you see so-and-so in school today? Were you able, like a question that is not a yes or no, which is challenging as a parent a lot of times. But try to see, like, to have them answer you with something that's not yes or no. For teenagers, and actually little kids too, you want to know who their friend group is. Who are they hanging out with? What are they doing? Just because it'll tell you a little bit more about what's going on. I ask families a lot of times that if they're able to have a family dinner together at a young age, it will incur, by the time they're teenagers, you're at least at dinner time, that's a good time to be talking, because then you're able to tap on, oh, no phones at that time, by the way.
Yeah.
And you're able to like pick out stuff. And if they see that since a young age, then they'll feel a little bit more comfortable most of the time. Sometimes you just have to sit in the room and say, okay, tell me what's wrong. because you have that gut feeling, but you have to be watching, listening all the time.
All right, and one thing that I've always heard here, I hear it from all types of doctors, that for health purposes, whether we're dealing with cancer, we're dealing with a heart condition, or we're dealing with any other issue, sleep and what you eat is very important.
Oh
So
my God.
talk to us about in kids, what type of pattern do we create in kids with regard to sleeping and eating? Listen, you know me as a bariatric surgeon,
Yeah.
dealing with obesity and dealing with young kids with obesity, and then in an adulthood, we know that poor eating habits as a child leads to bad problems as an adult. So talk to us about what as a parent, what are the correct eating habits and sleep habits that are going to be important for these kids?
So sleep habits are extremely important. Our babies develop best, and our teenagers do too, which is why they sleep so much, because it's their brains are developing in their teens, but they need more sleep during that time. Babies need it because their body is growing. So having a regular schedule of sleep is extremely important. And some families don't think that it's such a big, not that it's such a big deal. It's just they may find it hard because maybe a parent comes home late from work and they want to see their child. But it's important that they have let's say you have a 7:30 in the morning start. You need to be going to sleep by 8 o'clock. I know dad may come home at 10, and I know it's challenging. And that's, I want them to have a family relationship, but sleep is important for their development. So those are, we may have one-on-one conversations about that, but having a regular sleep schedule, going every night at the same time. Children thrive on schedules, be it during the day and also at night. Start bathing, doing that, taking a bath, washing your face, putting down the lights, reading, no screen. That's the same for adults who have insomnia. No screen for an hour before sleep. It does stimulate our brains. Some children their brains are going mile a minute, just like in adults. We want them to calm down. It may take some kids a little longer, and so we may need to get to the sleep pattern, getting ready a little earlier so they fall asleep by 9. With the teenagers, we try to do the same thing, but a lot of times they're doing homework until who knows what time. But we need to remind them of that, so that they can thrive. Better sleep patterns, we already know from studies that you actually improve obesity. If you sleep well, you're going to have less chances of being obese. With children, we already know the same studies that they talk to adults about, Mediterranean diet, healthy eating. We talk about it with our children, because if I start an 18-month-old eating that same kind of food, it's going to be so much easier when they're a teenager. So we try to encourage families about those healthy eating habits. Avoid fast food. Oh my gosh, that's the most awful thing. But how many families, but then there's a reality. How many families have soccer practice and then they go from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. and they got to go through McDonald's. So we try to find options of healthy eating. Meal prepping is a great way. Or a cantina. I don't know. There's healthy cantinas. But we try to find ways to help with that.
Wow, incredible. So incredible information. Thank you, Anna. We have learned quite a bit. We obviously started on vaccinations, and we wanted to know the safety of vaccinations as kids get back into school this week in our communities, and understanding the importance of vaccination. And then we've learned obviously how to deal with other issues with the kids. So we really, really thank you for your participation, for your information. Any words of wisdom that you'd like to give our parents? Besides, I know I've heard that connect with your child, create a bond early on. I heard that many times from you, and that'll help you along the way. And it probably will help you not only deal with the issues, but also be sensitive to when your child has an issue as well, right?
Absolutely. And, my biggest recommendation for a family is your child's expert. Communicate that with your pediatrician. If you have a worry, talk to them. You're the expert, but also be open to learning new things that can help your child be a better person, because in the end, that's what we want for our kids. We want them to be happy and successful adults. So there are many ways to do that, and every child will be a little bit different and a little challenging, but lots of fun along the way.
Wow. Well, thank you, thank you. We want our kids to be happy, and we want our kids to be healthy. And obviously,
Absolutely.
on behalf of Dr. Hernandez Puga, myself, Dr. Anthony Gonzalez from Miami Community Health, thanking you again for participating in our show and learning about vaccination. And August is Vaccination Awareness Month, so get out there and make sure your kids are vaccinated and are healthy. And once again, take care of yourself and your family. Dr. Anthony Gonzalez from Miami Community Health.